All right, we're live. I'm Joshua Kemble, and this is my live stream. I'm basically a freelance, was a freelance illustrator, graphic designer, and cartoonist for about 15 years. And then I've been an art director going on 7 years. And this is my live stream where I work on my personal comic projects late, often very late, or in this case, like really early. I don't know what time frame anyone watching this might be tuning in, but it's about midnight, and I'm working on roughs and thumbnails for book 2 of 2 stories. The first graphic novel, 2 stories. Um, oh my goodness, it's over there, so I'll just kind of mention it. But the first graphic novel, 2 stories, came out about, let's see, like in December from Marcosia Enterprises, and you can find it at any online book retailer. You can go to your LCS, your local comic book shop, and request that they order 2 stories, which is a 122-page graphic novel about faith and mental illness. And if you want to save a ton of money on it and you happen to have Amazon Prime, you can get free shipping and get the book for like something close to like 70% off on Amazon. So, anyhow, that just will give you a little bit of context as to what I'm working on. And again, I do these streams pretty late at night, so I have no idea if people will show up. Sometimes my night gang shows up, sometimes they don't. But my goal is to do live streams whenever I'm working towards my book. Today, in all honesty, I had like a Bible study kind of meetup, and and then it's like a small Bible study that friends of ours that aren't like bought into like kind of some creepy version of Christianity have kind of formed, because we don't have a lot of like local churches that we're aware of that we feel are kind of like actually following what they should be in belief. And so we just kind of meet up for dinner and like hang out and read through the Bible together and all that fun stuff. I know. As like an ex-atheist, I totally get that what I just said will probably turn off a giant chunk of people. But anyhow, so what I'm working on is part 2 of my graphic novel. This will be the second book, and this is getting very close to the conclusion. I have about a page left, a page to 2 pages of script. No, just about a page left of script to block out. And what I'm working on are roughs and thumbnails for the final pages. So once I finish these roughs and thumbnails, I'll be about a third of the way through my book. So that gives you a little context as to what's going on. I'm really long-winded, and I always try to like shorten these intros so they're not like super long-winded, but I fail every time. And I just noticed this has been like 3 minutes. So let's just get into it. It'll probably be a shorter stream tonight. I say that all the time, but this time I really do want to kind of finish up whatever I end up getting done by 1. And so what you're seeing on the screen are the thumbnails that I started working on during the IRS after party. The IRS is the indie review show that I do with Corey Kerr, who is himself like a very talented, kind of amazing animator and cartoonist in his own right. And we do a show where we talk about like independent comics and review them. And it's a show on its own channel. You can check it out on irsagency.com, and that'll take you to the last one that we did. With all that out, like again, I was trying to be not long-winded. With all of that said, I'm going to get into working and talk a little bit about stuff. So let's get going here. First, I want to kind of get in the zone and figure out what's going on here. And my camera went off over here. Hang on. See if I can get that thing working. Oh. Okay. Oh, look at that. It's back up. That camera's been a punk, like that camera over there. Hey, Frank, how's it going? I just spent like a minute of live streaming time correcting that camera over there, which has been a nightmare. And I do hope by like the next time I do like an indie review show, I think I'll use my newer phone as like the camera. I think I have a good rig set up, so hopefully it'll have like a clearer picture. Because I noticed like some really weird stuff during the stream that we did like yesterday, where there was like banding when we like zoomed in and you couldn't really see the details. This one has a better camera, so I think that'll be the way to go. But for these live streams, I'm still going to use this old monster right here that you're seeing because it's fun. I think it makes it more interesting for people to kind of be able to see like a couple views of what's going on. All right, so how you doing, Frank, and what are you working on, buddy? I kind of said this at the top, but my hope today is to kind of have like an hour stream, but people familiar with my live stream will probably know, as you probably know, Frank, I often say an hour and it becomes like 3. But tonight I came really close to just going straight to sleep, just because I was pretty exhausted. And like I started I trying to be really regimented about like a workout routine, and I started that at about 10 p.m. Well, actually, I honestly probably started that at like 11. But we just had a really busy day, so I miscalculated my time, which is very limited. But there's a ton of stuff. I did a vlog this morning too to talk a little bit about some of the stuff on my plate that I'd like to do. So here I need to have, so it was important for me to tell her what this was. Okay. And this is going to be interesting too. Oh, come on. Okay, so let me get some drawing in, and then I'll talk a little more. Frank said, I'm doing good. I'm making more practice sketch cards. These are Pokemon cards, but it's young versions of us. That's awesome. You have to catch them all, Frank. I think I need to recheck Instagram because I feel like I saw it very briefly, and it almost seemed like you were drawing like Kid Josh from 2 Stories, which was super flattering. And then I got pulled into like 3 other things, and I didn't get to give it the proper attention I need to. So I'm going to check that out. The Pokemon Chicks Tract Poke Souls. Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it, Frank. I think that's hilarious. Okay, so let's see here. Important for me to tell her what this was. Now I'm going to do... Yeah, I felt like you did justice to it, man. Like I should have had you draw that section of my book. But yeah, that's pretty exciting. Anyhow, I'll try to check it out today. Like my goal is just to get my comics done, but I'm gonna try to check that out tomorrow on Instagram and maybe like repost it to my stories or something because that's cool, and that's not a common occurrence. Like I've sold some books, but I don't get a ton of fan art, so I appreciate it. Not that you're making fan art, you're making more like friend art, but still, you know what I mean. It's flattering. Who doesn't like seeing their characters drawn by other people? I guess like Walt Disney, maybe. Let's see. I'm just gonna make Disney bashes for like the next. This doesn't look like somebody trying to muster up conviction or courage. I think I need to have like a... There we go. Okay, and then I want the mouth back a little bit. Let's see. Yep. That's a little more like it. Okay, so just thumbnails, dude. These are thumbnails and roughs, not anything that need like crazy amounts of detail. Okay. So I'm kind of knocking through this. But I am really excited. I have like about a page left of cartooning to do, which is pretty cool. I think that's pretty epic. So are you gonna actually make Pokemon cards based on our bit? I think that's pretty awesome if so, Frank. Okay, so let's see here. So anyhow, like I said, I posted a vlog that talked about some of the things on my plate to work on. I need to kind of create a proposal for my previous graphic novel, so my literary agent can start shopping that around. And then yeah, I mean, I have to read 3 scripts from friends. I have like some buddies who've sent me scripts that they want me to kind of look over, and I want to return the favor of like what people have done for me, because like when I worked on this book, I've sent the script to some really trusted people, and it really helped out and helped shape the story. So I'm hoping to do that. And then aside from that, like I have a bunch of comic shops that I visited over the weekend that I gotta send follow-ups to. And there's just like, it's definitely been one of those. I feel like this is definitely, I feel like there's like seasons, especially in parents' lives, you know, where it's like when your kids are certain ages, you have seasons where you're just like completely slammed and just barely treading water with like all the things you need to do. And then I feel like probably before we know it, I would guess, um, it's all gone, you know, and your kid's like all grown and you're like, wow, I missed those days, you know. Um, and maybe find yourself with like too much time. But I definitely feel like people often find themselves with like too much time or too little. And I think if you're a creative, the latter is a lot more likely than the former. And then Frank said, I'm doing them as sketch cards, and I'll ink and color a set of 4 cards. I'll send you and Gary a set. Dude, that would be amazing. I will be so flattered. And then another person to kidify. I think it's awesome. Well, maybe you can do Anna or something. I don't know. I wonder if Adam would be cool with being kidified, like Adam Lore. All right, so let's see here. Or you could do Jake, like Jake Twister. See how that works out. All right. Or Scott Circlin. Scott, you know what? You should just go with Scott. There you go. Dude, do Scott. And you can make Scott look like you know, he's like wearing a lab coat, right? His Scott's lab coat, but he could also kind of like look a little more similar to like one of the Young and the Dead characters. And by that, I'm referencing Scott Strickland of youngandthedead.com. And actually, by the way, Frank mentioned Gary. And Gary Hodges is a rad artist who we are trying to get more people to subscribe to because he's awesome. So subscribe to Gary Hodges' channel on YouTube and, Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. He's pretty much the first result you get on YouTube if you Google that or search for that. That's not really Googling if it's on YouTube. I've just revealed my boomerness. Okay. I'm going to do like a little gulp. Okay. That's the wrong expression still. Oh, there we go. Now we're getting there. Okay, well, whatever. That'll do. So I do want some text here. And I feel like there's a previous bit that shows the phone. And I want to make sure if I'm going to do another phone sequence, I want to make sure the phone matches. That would be important to have the phone be somewhat similar. There it is. So we're going to pull this open, check this out. Let's see what we got here. Ah, there's my phone. I had a feeling. This has been a long process, like doing these. Yeah, I agree, Frank. Scott is totally your best bet if you're going to kidify people from our circle. Plus, Scott is kind of like one of those hubs, like how in a wheel there's like a point. I'm sure there's a term for it. Like a fulcrum would be a good term. Like Scott is like a fulcrum. Like he connects a lot of people. So I think that would be your best bet. All right, so here I'm going to have this be like a text sequence. And again, the aim today is to just get as much as I can done before 1 so that I get a decent amount of sleep tonight. Yeah, because it's been like, especially the last few days, anybody following kind of my channel might notice, but it's like I've been very close to burnout, which is something you kind of ride close to a lot when you're working on comics. So I am trying to kind of skate the line, like without, kind of falling over into total burnout. And so far, I've had success with it, but you never know. Okay. I also feel pretty good about the vlog I did today because I talked a little bit about sort of why I'm like seeking to get assessed for autism. Not necessarily diagnosed, because who knows. But and I was a little vulnerable with it, which I hope makes for really good content, but it was definitely a weird one. Jake's here. How's it going, Jake? Jake said, I feel you've been burnt out for months now, but slowly creeping back. Yeah, it's just a fine line, right? But it was a good video because it's like ever since, I think it's important to talk publicly about mental health struggles. Like, I don't think you should be like a burden on people or anything, but I think it's important to talk about, like, it's part of why I even wrote a whole comic, like pretty much dedicated to the subject. Because I feel like there's so much stigma to mental health issues that it just makes people kind of run away from it or treat it with like a 10-foot pole. And that just creates like feelings of isolation for people going through not being, like neurotypical or whatever. So I've been like just kind of every once in a while, nothing special or anything, but I've just been like, talking about it pretty openly on YouTube, and then like on my other social media platforms, like on Facebook, to friends and stuff. And what's been shocking is like I have some pretty open-minded people that I know, and yet like a lot of them just have very cliche responses when you're kind of like, when I'm just talking about like, hey, I'm just trying to kind of get this assessment, and a lot of people's responses tend to be like equivalent to like, well, why would you be seeking a diagnosis? Like, why are you self-diagnosing and stuff? And I'm like, I'm not. Like, I think it's just people online miss nuance sometimes, where it's like, hey, just put, like, if you do the math and you realize like, a lot of this originates from like, going through our own journey with like my son and his autism, and like all the specialists we've had to have him see, and like giving him assistance and learning a lot of things about it so that we could kind of better parent him and provide him with like a better pathway for the future and stuff. And then like, like going from like sped courses to like main, like regular general ed courses, and kind of just going through this whole journey. It's been a lot of work. And frankly, like a lot of work on my wife's end that like between the two of us, like she's put in more work on it. But it's interesting because it's like in that context, like, it's not crazy to think that like if you're a parent who kind of has like grew up with the same exact thing and they didn't have a name for it at the time, and you're just noticing all of these things, like you're working on behaviors with your kid that you're like, wow, I had this. Like, it kind of makes sense that that would be like a thing you'd seek out. But anyhow, I just have noticed that there's like so much stigma and weirdness about it that like, and people's instant reaction is like almost like a common reaction to most mental health issues, where people just instantly like assume you're faking or you're overly exaggerating, or like they want to kind of change the subject and be like, hey, let's think about happy things and stuff like that. So, which is weird because like autism isn't like the same as like depression. Like it can cause depression, but it's not like equivalent to like depression or like anxiety or anything like that. Like it's just in fact, like there's even skepticism within the scientific community as to whether it should even be considered like a mental illness per se, because especially high functioning autism, it's like it could just be like that these people have like a gift, right? Like, and I know that's corny, it's like gifted or whatever, but it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know why people freak out so much. It's like if I were to say like, hey, I want to like, I kind of think I like tore a hamstring. I need to go to the doctor and I'd like to get that assessed, right? Like I just want to see like, is it my hamstring? Like, or like, what was it that like I messed up that feels like that, right? It's kind of like that, but like if you do that online, nobody's like, why are you self-diagnosing? Like, and like nobody freaks out, but like everybody, like, I don't know. It's been interesting to me. People I would think know better and have responded in that kind of way of like, well, what the heck, um, it's going to be tough diagnosing as an adult. So you got to better bet on a lot of memory. Yeah, there's that. And then just I mean, obviously, like there's still things that I think it affects in my current, state, but like obviously, like I've had to learn ways to kind of navigate and fake things, you know, and I've done it fairly successfully. So, which is pretty common with high functioning autistic adults. So it's going to be a long pathway. And like, honestly, I'm not even ruling out the fact that I might get assessed and they'll be like, no, 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 it's this other thing, which I doubt, but I'm just saying it's possible. Um, but it's like, I really do think it's important to be like vocal about these kind of things, because like a lot of people kind of go through this and like stay really quiet about it and kind of treat it with like kid gloves, and like, we're all adults, like we can handle, you know, yeah. Hand your comic to the psychologist assessing you. That's a good call. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, because initially, like, so far my experience has just been like the healthcare system's like ridiculous, and like they sent me to like therapist at first, and then like the therapist was like, and once again that was like a month wait, like, and it took 5 or 6 months just to get to the therapy thing, and they had me filling out these forms, and I'm like, I mean, I guess this might be the thing, but this doesn't seem like it's for this issue. um and then it turned out, like, hours of these forms, and like some of the questions, this will crack you guys up, but some of the, like, one of the questions on the forms was like, how do you deal with, like, if your parents tell you to do something that you don't want to do, or if you get grounded? And I was like, I don't think this is a test for like my age range. Like, I don't think this has to do with like, it was. So then finally I got kind of routed to like a therapist. And then it turned out that like the therapist, within like a second of, because I just, at the beginning was like, hey, I have a kid who's autistic. Like, I'm pretty happy in my life. But I've just noticed, like, we were going through ABA and speech therapy and all this different stuff. And I've just noticed, like, every time I read like all the symptoms of autism, like especially high functioning autism, I'm just like, check, 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 check. Like, that's insane. And to the point where I've like talked to my wife and been like, hey, this is not really autism, right? Like, this is just how everybody feels. And my wife's like, nope. And I'm like, oh, okay, there's something there. Anyhow, so it's just funny. So so I explained that to the therapist, and within like a minute she was just like, yeah, I have no idea why they sent you to me. This is stupid. Like, you should have been sent to this person, because she's like, even if I wanted to like test you for it, like, I'm not qualified to do that, because I'm like a therapist. And they're like, you need a psychologist who deals specifically with like, it specializes in autism. And I was like, oh, like, so can I book with them? And finally, after all this rigmarole, like, finally they got me in the right spot. Anyhow, I feel like I'm complaining at this point. I'm not trying to complain. I just I feel pretty good about the vlog I did today about it, because I feel like again, just like, and I catch it in myself, right? Like, if somebody talks really vulnerably about something that's awkward, that's not like a norm, like a normative thing to talk about, like, the temptation for me too is just like, hey, let's change the subject, stay positive, like, but I don't think that does us any good. Like, obviously dwelling on, hard topics is not necessarily good either, but it's like just completely treating every like abnormal thing with like kid gloves, as if it's like leprosy or something. Just, I don't know. It's interesting to me. Paul was saying it took him a year to get diagnosed with Parkinson's. Holy crap. And that's like, I mean, that should be pretty like, why are there so, like, that's what I'm getting at, is like, it's not, it affects enough people to where I would think they'd have like a fairly streamlined criteria to diagnose that kind of thing. Like, I know it's not the norm, but it's like Paul, like what you're talking about, like Parkinson's is not abnormal enough to where they couldn't do better. But I yeah. That makes me mad, Paul. I'm sorry to hear that. That's absurd. because that also has like a lot of very telltale symptoms, you know, especially if you're like experiencing them and are like, I think I have this, and they're like, well, let's do these other things, you know. That's got to be frustrating, but I'm glad you got through it. And then Corey was saying some of his students on the spectrum excel on certain types of projects compared to their peers. Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, it depends. You know, not everybody's like, you know, Rain Man or anything, but it's like, you know, like my son is like the smartest kid in his class. He's smarter than I was at his age, you know, like a million times smarter, especially with math. Like I've always been pretty awful with math, but he's like amazing at it, you know. One doctor actually said to me, it's not like you have Parkinson's. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay, guys. Now I want to hear medical horror stories because like I said, I'm kind of annoyed with like the stigma about stuff. So tell me your medical horror stories in the chats. If you want. I mean, obviously, I don't want to press people to talk about anything they don't want to talk about, but I think that would be a great topic. What do you think? Gary's just like, whoa. I don't know if that's in reaction to me saying, let's talk about it, or, ooh, he said, I've got a horror story, sorta. Oh my gosh. Okay, Gary, dish. I should just invite some of you guys on. Well, if you guys want to come on and chat, I'm only going to be streaming for like maybe another 30 minutes. But if anybody wants to hop on or feels up to chat, and let me know. I'll send you guys a link. Yeah, Paul said, I went down a dark hole trying to stay positive. Yeah, like it's tough because I think all of us, like I'm sure Paul, you've been in a position too where like, yeah, Jake was saying pass, he's got to work. That makes sense. But oh nice, Gary's gonna do the short version. Okay, I love it. Went to the doctor for months to every test imaginable to have them accuse you of making it up, and it was lactose intolerance. Yep. Yeah, so that's the hard part though. The thing that you were talking about, Paul, with like the stay positive, like we have that we put that on ourselves, you know. But I've totally caught myself trying to do that to people too. So it's not like I'm perfect, you know. Like there's definitely times where like somebody will share something and I'm like, whoa, I'm just not in the mood, you know. It's probably not the best thing to be like that though, is I guess what I'm aspiring to try to be a little better with it. Wow, that's crazy though. I like your guys' medical horror stories so far. Okay, this is gonna say, I gotta look at an old, let's see, 2003 phone screen. Maybe it was earlier. Okay, there we go. But I want to see like the call menu. I think I got a message of some kind. Something beeped. Oh, Corey's on. How's it going, Corey? I was like, something beeped. I have no idea what.
I'm just here beeping.
I think you just wanted to get rid of my wonderful banner here.
I love the banner, man. It's my favorite.
It is a great banner. Okay, so Gary's going through his medical horror story, which I'm actually really excited about. I actually like this topic for like a stream because I like talking about all the stuff you're not supposed to talk about at parties. That's my favorite subject. I went to the doctor with what I assumed was reflux, maybe a hiatal hernia, and as a precaution, the doctor had me do an ECG to make sure. That's an echiogram, right? to make sure it wasn't cardiac. Sure thing, I said, not worried. Did the ECG, told me to put my shirt back on, left the room, came back and says, so it's saying you recently had a heart attack. Oh my gosh. So you're like, I said, I think I'd know if I had a heart attack. Oh my gosh. Okay, I got to hear the rest of this. Now I'm eagerly awaiting part 3. I bet he's going to be like, part 3 is in Dinosaurs versus Mars bots.
Buy it now.
By the way, you guys should all subscribe to Gary Hodges' channel. We found out the other day that it needs more subscriptions, man. Gary's a brilliant artist. How are you doing, Corey, man?
I'm all right. How are you? I just barely jumped on, so I'm not sure how long you've been talking or what you've been saying.
So we got on the topic of, I mean, it's mainly just like the topic of like medical horror stories.
I don't have any of those.
I feel like you have more. I think you have enough of those to fit like you could write like the next War and Peace, or like Churchill's like World War II history books. It's like the 20 volumes, you know, like with the red spine. That would be Corey's. Okay, part 3. Ooh, you guys, the suspense is killing me on this story from Gary. Gary's a good storyteller. I just want to say, this is the way to tell a story. I wish I could do this as compellingly. Okay, part 3. She said, I think so too. We can find out by drawing some blood. If you had a heart attack, we'll be able to see. So I said, yes, please. Let's do that. So she says, you have a choice. Oh, these page turns, Gary. This is the suspense you will experience in Dinosaurs versus Mars bots. Okay. And then Paul was saying, good one, I think, to the having the hook of it be his book. Frank was saying, constantly going to psychologists and doctors from 11 to mid-adulthood. A doctor threatened to diagnose me as mentally retarded when I was around 12 because I was playing around in the doctors. Oh, this makes me lose faith in the system so bad. You want to hear part 4?
I do.
I gotta do this calling thing. So I'm gonna build the suspense just a little bit more for anybody watching. Not that they can't just scroll through the chats and find out.
And part 5 is up now.
Oh my gosh, part 4 and 5, you guys, coming soon.
Now you're doing like a trade waiting thing where you're just like letting the issues build up until they get collected.
I love it. Yeah. They're going to start accruing in value too. You guys are going to have to start swapping stories and subscribing to Gary Hodges' channel like immediately. Okay, so what did they... I'm trying to just think. I can't find a good menu on old cell phones. Do you remember what it looked like? Was it like call and send or call and text? I feel like it had like 2 buttons.
So what year?
Like early 2000, but like a flip. Like the cheap flip phones.
I had a Razor and a chocolate back then.
Okay.
Let me look. Yeah, that's what I had. Okay, let's see. Original Motorola Razr V3. You can get it for $24 on eBay. What does the screen look like?
Paul was like, what year? LOL.
So this is what the screen looks like.
Got it. What about when you select someone to call? What does it look like? See, that's what I couldn't find, and I might just have to BS it. I don't know.
I mean, it was back when they were doing this like 8-bit icons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. There would probably be like a little... Okay. Make a little 8-bit icon.
Yeah, because you see those little like wrench, screwdriver, phone. I don't know. I have a flip phone, but it's like a newer flip phone.
Okay. Oh my gosh. We've got part 8 too, you guys. The suspense is, if it's killing you, what you should all do is go subscribe to Gary Hodges' channel. I'm just saying. If the suspense is too much to handle. I don't know. Corey, what are you working on, man? Is this a music video? It seems like it, because these
Yep.
are like those paper doll cutouts.
Yeah. How about this one? Does that look?
That looks about right.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. I do like the idea of like the little. Okay, well, I'm gonna leave it here. Let's see. Okay, I want to. Where were we at? Were we at part 4? You
Part
guys?
4. Yeah.
Okay, part 5. I might go. No, I'm gonna stick to a half an hour here, guys. Like 20 minutes longer. Okay. So part 5. So she says, "Okay, is there a hospital?" Wait a minute.
You skipped 4.
We skipped 4.
Yeah.
Okay, part 4. You can either have the blood drawn here or get the results in a few days, or go to the ER and get it drawn and find out today. I said, today? I'm not going to wonder for a few days. So she says, okay, is there a hospital you like? I suggest one by my home. She says, oh, no. That's too far. Go to the one around the corner. So now I'm scared because, like, too far.
The hospital's too far.
That's true. That is kind of a scary thing to say.
Wait, hold on. This is the same woman that was like, you could wait a couple days.
Yeah, this is so strange.
But you can't drive. You can't drive, 10 more miles or whatever.
Are you saying I'm going to die on the way to the hospital? So I go around the corner expecting to die in a car of massive coronary. Part 7, X-rays, ER, cardiologist referral, hundreds of bucks in copays, and the results was reflux. Oh, that is brutal.
Anybody ever gone to the ER for an impacted bowel? That's about the same.
I had a I did have like a scare where I had like pain in my left arm and like kind of froze up while driving, and it was like feeling like I was gonna have a heart attack. I went to the hospital and they did all these tests and like nothing was. They just gave me like a bunch of relaxants or something. It was like some kind of stress thing.
Yeah, we went to the ER one time early on in marriage, and Malia was like having all kinds of abdominal pain, and it was kind of concerning. And we're in there, and we're like, this is I love crap like this now, but at the time it was like we were trying to get pregnant, and the way that we found out that it didn't work that time was a nurse shouted across a crowded like hallway, yeah, they're not pregnant, go ahead and do the x-ray. And it's like, oh cool, thanks for that. Anyway, so yeah, but like she got asked about 50 times, like, when was your last bowel movement? She was like, this morning. Anyway, so they did the x-ray, and then the doctor just came in. This is why I love Idaho. The doctor just comes in. Yep, it's a lot of poop in there.
Oh man,
it's like, cool, thanks for the several $100s worth of emergency care there.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. Gary says, I legit still have anxiety over it. It's almost like it gave me hypochondria. Yeah, I think like even that one time I had the pain in the left arm, I remember hearing this story from my grandpa who had a stroke, and it all started with like pain in his left arm when he was driving.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, it felt like that. It was like right where it should be, if it's that. So I was like, do I want to be my grandpa and have like half my body paralyzed? Like,
yeah.
Or do I want to just like suck it up and go to the hospital? And if I'm wrong, at least I'm still like alive. But if I'm right, at least I'm still alive.
Oh man, I don't mess around with strokes.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to.
You're like racing against the clock.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's like, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want to go that route, you know. Ate a bunch of potatoes, followed by some really potent carrot juice, and got reflux. I thought I was gonna die. Yeah, for sure. It's funny that I mean, it's funny in retrospect, but at the time it can be pretty scary. Yeah, I don't know why. Like, I don't know. Do you know why like people just instantly stigmatize anything that's not normal?
Are we talking? What do you mean?
Just like abnormal topics of conversation, like you know, somebody talks about a heavy topic, they're just like, oh well, on a better note, like, you know, or think of the positive.
I just think people have no idea what to do or say, and most people that are not creative have not trained themselves to be comfortable being uncomfortable, you know, like, because if you've spent years, you know, iterating ideas and being creative, like, you've trained yourself to sit in a state of mind that is very uncomfortable.
That's true. And also we're kind of like used to failing, like and I don't mean that in a negative way, like we're used to like trying something in art that may not work and then going, oh, okay, or being put up for public scrutiny, things that we're personally invested in. So like vulnerability and scrutiny are like hand in hand.
Oh yeah.
But I'll admit, you know, even I fall prey to like that nonsense and pull that sometimes.
Well, I also think we're naturally kind of empathetic.
Yeah.
And so I think we're trying to save the other person from experiencing discomfort. Because like when I'm doing stuff, I catch myself all the time like making statements that I have to correct. Like I'll be telling people, yeah, you know, you should probably, and I'm like, oh, hold on. No, absolutely, this design is terrible. It needs to change. But like I start with like the sugarcoating soft words, and then I'm like, oh, sorry, excuse me, just a minute. Just to be perfectly clear, this is awful.
Yeah.
I apologize for not being more clear earlier.
Oh yeah, like when there's pushback to an extent, at some point you just kind of have to break it down and be like, no, you let me just lay it out. This is why this is terrible. And they're like,
even without pushback though, if I'm just like giving critique, I just, you know, they want it, they've asked for it, you know, and yet I still feel the need to have this like kind of waffling soft language where, and then I'm like, no, that's more confusing and not helpful to them at all. So
I mean, I do think
I hate this jacket.
There's a little sugar when you're giving any critiques, but I totally agree. Gary said, I think normal people are uncomfortable with real talk as uncomfortable with real talk as we are with small talk, for sure. Like, because I get really weirded out by like so how about the game kind of stuff. I'm like, I can't do this today. I can't do the how this game thing. And then eventually within 5 seconds, they're going to find out I don't even watch sports and I don't know what the team is on their shirt. Like,
I have recently decided that I'm totally okay with just walking away from any sports conversation. Not in a rude way, but like I did it. I was at my brother-in-law's wedding, and
at a wedding. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, and so it's a bunch of my brothers-in-laws, you know, because my wife is third of 9, so there's a lot of girls in that family, and most of them are married. Anyway, and they're like really into sports, like so much into sports that like, and I don't know if this is normal or if they are really into it, but like so into it that they discuss like their opinions of the decisions that the coach made on different things. Anyway, so like one of those conversations, like I was like, hey, how's it going? I haven't seen these guys in a couple months, some of them a couple of years. And they're like, good, you know, it's like normal conversation. And then as soon as they were like, you know, one of them turned to the other and was like, so what did you think of Coach So-and-so's decision to blah, 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 blah? I like took a breath and I was like, I don't need to pretend to care about this. And so I just got up and left.
I love it though. I mean, my go-to is usually just to kind of reiterate how much I don't understand sports.
You know,
I'll be like, is that where they just kind of like, or I'll just ask inquisitive questions because I like literally know absolutely like I missed a lot of fundamental things about sports because like I said, the last time I even played or watched sports was probably like 6th or 7th grade. So I've spent a good deal of my life like forgetting all the rules.
Yeah, the only thing with that though is I have friends who've explained that is it almost feels like you're trying to make them feel bad about the thing they enjoy.
Yeah, and that's definitely not the intent, you know.
Right, and I know that's not the intent, but for me too, I just felt the need to be like, I want to participate in this conversation, but I hate what you're talking about. So I'll just be like, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know anything about it, you know, or whatever. But apparently, like even announcing that you're just not into it is. So I just you know I just go somewhere else now. I'm just all right. I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on in the kitchen.
I do find it fascinating though sometimes because I'll be like, so why is that like what is the rule there? And like what is the you know, like it isn't interesting.
See,
to an extent, like from like almost like, but the problem is you're right, because it could come across as condescending because my approach to it's almost like anthropological, where I'm like, so why is that of interest?
What a bizarre culture.
And explain this strange ritual with a ball stitched with leather.
Explain to me how this works, you savages.
Gary, how's it going? What are you up to? How's work? Car good? Me, can you just stab me? Yeah, so like another thing that makes me think like I might potentially be autistic too is like I not only do I have trouble with small talk, but like if I try to play the small talk game, I just sound like a complete lunatic. Because I'll be like, so, how are never mind. You know, just I can't. I just can't. Like I try. I mean, I can kind of.
Like
it's really hard.
What's considered small talk? Because I'm curious. Because I don't have a problem talking to anybody kind of about anything.
I think it's like water.
Somewhere to be.
Yeah, I think it's like water cooler stuff, you know, just like the small talk stuff where it doesn't get very deep. It's just like, oh, how are the, you know, the thing that is easy is like when it's people I know and I'm like sincerely like, hey, how are the kids? But I'm not saying it like generically, like I actually want to know like, how are your kids doing? Like how'd the thing go the other day, you know? But like the stuff that Gary just cited were really good examples. Actually, let me see if I can find that quote again. So, how's it going? What are you up to? How's work? The car good? Like that kind of thing. But I also get it. It's like it's an attempt for people to engage and show interest. You know, it's just hard for me to. It's like I struggle with it. Like I can do it, but I struggle with it, and then I feel really stressed out afterwards.
So I have so many questions. Mainly, is it like the way that it makes you feel? Like, do you determine, I believe this is small? Because like, I think if I asked you those questions, you probably wouldn't consider it small talk because we're good friends and you start with the assumption that I care about what you have to say and your life and things like that. So is it like a relationship thing or is it an assumption?
I think it's like reading social cues kind of thing. Like with you, I can read social cues because I've known you for a while, right? So I can kind of read you a little better. Although I'll even miss your social cues like quite often, I'm sure. But it's like with a complete stranger, like I don't have a lot of entry into that. And then if it's not even a stranger, but just sort of like a coworker, but a coworker I don't know incredibly well, that's very hard. Like it's just a hard thing to navigate for me. I mean, I get through it, but like I said, I think I get an unusual amount of anxiety from doing it. Like I can kind of play the game of it and then I leave feeling like I just lost like my soul for 2 seconds or 10 minutes or whatever.
And have you thought and tell me if I'm like overreaching or whatever, but like
Yeah.
I'm very curious. What causes that feeling?
I think it's because a lot of it's like so like small talk is where there's an implied agreement. We won't go into any depth. So like that, how are you doing? And fine. Like regardless of fineness, which I totally agree is kind of hard. So I think it's the inauthenticity of it, where it's
Okay.
like the like, so champ, that kind of thing. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
there's an
So
authentic way to do it, and I try to participate in the more authentic version. But when I know I'm in the chess game of the small talk that doesn't have an objective other than just kind of like, we are making connection as we get coffee, you know, that's a little tough for me. I've figured out ways to navigate it, but like I said, it just there's something about I also just have trouble like not getting into like super in-depth stuff. If I've gone into in-depth stuff with people, then I can kind of go all over the place. But I don't know.
is that an autism trait?
It's very common with autism, like small talk, uh, awkward truthfulness, like, and then like a huge part of it would be just reading social cues. So it's like if I'm having a conversation and somebody loses interest, it's hard for me to read that they're losing interest. It's like I have to learn like in ways that a lot of people don't. Like a lot of people don't have to learn that, like if you're talking to somebody and like if you're talking to a woman and they like cross their arms, like they're kind of mad or like disengaged and stuff like that. I'm the person who I had to read a book that mentioned that and then be like, oh, like, you know, um, and then kind of remember it. And then, so for me, it's like more of like a rote learning kind of thing where I have to like memorize those things in order to kind of navigate them,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think a lot of people will kind of naturally, intuitively, like kind of pick up on those things.
Interesting.
So, I mean, it's just like one of the things, but yeah, for sure.
So is small talk like almost threatening because it's difficult to gauge those like cues and those like nonverbal signals?
Well, because like the whole thing of small talk requires a lot of nonverbal signals. Like for instance, the fact that like someone saying "How are you doing" doesn't actually want to know how you're doing. Like like that kind of thing is awkward to navigate. Don't get me wrong, I can do it. Obviously, I've grown to like learn how to do it, but it's just exhausting. Like I think it's the inauthenticity of it. It's the kind of dishonesty, and as Gary was saying, like the vapidness of it. It's but for me, he's saying he doesn't find it difficult. I find it both. Like I find it very difficult, but I think it's because it just, and I'm not saying like, I think for some people that has a lot of significance, and definitely working in management, I know that, right? Like, cause I've seen, the effect it has on morale, and strangely enough, like little bits of small talk do actually improve morale, and it can be totally meaningless interactions that have like a lot of little meanings, and a lot of it's just touching base and kind of letting people know you care, like in the slightest way, like you're noticed, like that kind of thing.
Because that's something that I found. Like I bumped into my boss's boss today at the lunchroom. So I went to the cafeteria to grab some food, and I noticed the dean of the college. And so I just walked up to him and said, "Hey, how's it going, Kurt?" And he's like, "Oh, good, But like, I remembered several specific things that had happened to him recently, and so I'm curious, like,
yeah, and that's not hard for me. Like, if I have a pretty good memory with that, like even with clients, like there's a client I know who has a dog that they're obsessed with, and they kind of like take it to all these dog shows and stuff like that. And her husband like are really particular about corgis, right? It's like a specific breed of corgi. So I've met this client. I met this client once and I registered that information, right? Like I registered like a bunch of different information, like places in the city they like to go for walks, like stuff like that. So that the next time, like a year later, even though we're just doing business, it's still important to have that like personal interaction and memory of the person because they shared a bit about themselves, right? So I will always bring up like the corgi or like her nephew, right? And stuff like that. Like from like little interactions. So I have a really good memory for those kind of things.
Okay, so here's my question.
Yeah.
If he had been on the spectrum, which he may be, I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't have a bad relationship, but like we don't have a close relationship. Like he knows my name.
Yeah.
Would he view that as small talk, or would he view that as like, oh, this guy remembered like a thing that we had talked about 2 years ago?
Well, so the fact that you actually are making it more personal, I think would feel less authentic. So that would help. And then the other thing is like, it's a spectrum. So I don't know, like,
right. Yeah. Cause I'm curious because I don't communicate inauthentically. I actually, when I'm having small talk, I actually do want to know how the person is doing. You know what I mean? Like when I know it sounds the same to everyone, but I hate it when people are like, fine. Like, and most of the time I'll follow up and be like, really? Like, how's the thing?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
good follow up to that is just like, should I believe you?
right.
Like, I like that one. Yeah, no, I mean, I have to make it because like, it's just part of navigating the world. It's just, like I can be incredibly social at like a party too. I can be pretty engaging and like it's just that like after the party I feel like I've given myself. Like I don't feel like it's just exhausting. It's like mentally taxing. But I can do it. But I think it's because I've developed ways to kind of act through it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like I know the intention, I understand the dynamic of it. I don't connect to it and it doesn't flow naturally. It's just something that's developed to the point where it can kind of feel natural now. I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally. Here's how much of that, because what you're describing could also be, and Gary just said the same thing, but how much of that is introversion and how much of that is autism?
So that's the weird thing is like, I mean, it's a mix, but I mean, autism, like if it were just that one thing, I would not think I was autistic. There's a lot of things.
I'm not challenging. Yeah. I'm not challenging your diagnosis.
I don't think that, and right, I haven't been diagnosed. So yeah.
Right, but I mean, I'm not questioning that. I'm just trying to differentiate. Like in my mind, I'm building like little Venn diagrams of.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good question because I think it could be both, right? Like I definitely think introverts have social anxiety, right? Like there's a lot of things, there's a lot of overlap.
Because my wife turned into an introvert like after she had like postpartum depression for 4 years.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's gonna happen. And honestly, a lot of mental illness tries to kind of isolate you from social situations, and right. So introversion and mental illness like are like best friends.
That's how pleasant.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a curmudgeon. Like I like being at home, but I actually enjoy social interaction and stuff. It's just the interesting thing is like also when I engage in small talk, even though I'm being authentic, people tend to view it very strangely because the way I do it is just different than most people, because it's not natural. And it's not like it's inauthentic. It just comes across kind of weird where it's like,
so when you say that,
like, for instance, if I make small talk, sometimes it is very much like, someone has cats, like they, have these specific cats and they were talking about their cat being sick the other day. And so I'll go up and be like, oh, how's your cat doing? Are they feeling better, from being sick? And like, they'll just, I don't know. I think it's just the way I approach it. It's just, I don't know what it is, but it's very strange.
So I have another question follow up with that.
Yeah.
is that your fear that it's strange, or is that your perception of it? Or
no, I've been told that.
Okay, yeah.
Like that's the weird thing is like, and usually it is like described in a way that's hard to describe, where they're like, it's weird because it was like almost kind of normal, but it was like the way you worded it, or all sound pretentious, which is not my intent. Like I won't, sometimes I am like legitimately pretentious, but very rarely. But I come across as pretentious a lot. And that's a whole other thing. Yeah. Anyhow, I'm totally rambling about this thing, and I'm supposed to be in bed. It's 1:00. I made a promise. Jake called me out on it too. I don't know if Frank dropped a $5 bet. Did he? Did I agree to this bet? I tend to think you need to agree to a bet, But tell me when in the chats that happened. But yeah, I actually am enjoying the conversation. I just like made a promise at the beginning, and I'm like really bad at sticking to it. But I also know I'll burn out. I don't know. Yeah, Frank's confused. He's like, did I do a bet? Oh, did you know like Frank is actually like before we kind of call it, he is doing a Pokemon chick track like we talked about.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
As a bit, and like a while ago. I do like this conversation though. I want to continue it. So, it's interesting though. I do think a lot of it's like being a nerd and just being like kind of a bit of an introvert as well. But it's like it's very interconnected with like a lot of other things, like as a kid I did like hand flapping and like there's a whole ton of stuff that are like the stuff.
Sure.
But that's one of them. And it's like, even with my son, it's hard to parse, right? Like some of his behavior is just like a totally normal 7-year-old,
Right.
And then some of it's like super autistic. And then a lot of it's like really gray. Like there's a lot of gray areas too, where it's like, it's not so clear. And I would say that for myself too, cause I'm kind of quirky anyway.
Well, and kids, kids of all walks of life are bizarre. Just
100%.
Like the way kids process things and think about stuff, and the kind of lack of empathy that they have for the first few years.
Yeah.
It's hard to relate to, like my 2-year-old is a very sweet child.
Yeah.
But like will also just like slam like a metal car in his sister's face.
Yeah.
Just because he's 2. So it's like a very like scientific experiment thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, interesting. Like, and he's just watching the reaction. Like he wasn't even mad.
Oh yeah. Anyone who thinks that kids are born like these perfect angels and then they just get corrupted has just never had kids. Because it's like parents, a lot of parents don't realize like some empathy is innate, but not most. And like things like sharing, empathizing with others, like a lot of those are very trained behaviors. And I've rarely seen like a parent or a kid who didn't need that trained. Now there's different kids that are like a little more sensitive to other kids. But yeah, in general, I totally agree with that. Yeah. Kids are, I think everyone's a little nuts, I think that's one of the reasons I think it's good to kind of destigmatize like mental illness stuff. That's why I'm trying to openly talk about like the autism thing, because it's just like this is something a lot of adults with autistic kids actually have, where they're like, oh, like I'm seeing all these things, and it's interesting because I wonder if I like you just start like, because in our generation they didn't know,
right.
So it's pretty normal experience for people. I mean, obviously it's abnormal, but it's not like, it's not as crazy and like taboo as I think people make all of this stuff, like.
Well, and I mean, what is normal anyway?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and I think normal's boring. And
normal is
I've always felt that way.
Normal is such an inaccurate term to use when you're describing like a species that is so diverse. It's not like humans are like zebras or cheetahs or something where it's like, yeah, you've got kind of this kind and this kind and this kind. And you're going to have like, 2 or 3 different types of personalities. It's like, I mean, there's as many different, variables as there are people, like multiplied by thousands. And so saying normal is just, it's always bothered me.
Yeah. And I think that, honestly, I think a lot of people who like kind of crave like normalcy and like sort of streamlined like boxed houses and stuff, like I think that actually might be the abnormal. I think the most mentally ill people in the world might be the people who want like to live in a tiny box on a hill full of ticky tacky, like that kind of thing. Like I think, I don't know. To me, I think that that's the mentally ill thing. Like, why would, like, the mentally ill thing would be like, I go out on my yard and I see my neighbor bought an RV and I'm like, I gotta buy a different RV. I gotta just get like a bigger RV. And then they get like a new lawnmower and I'm like, I gotta get a better lawnmower. And they upgrade their lawn and then I'm like, crap, I gotta upgrade my lawn. Like, that's, to me, like, if you talk about mental illness, like, that is severe mental illness. Like, I don't know what that syndrome is, but I would almost call it like normal, and that should be in the DSM or whatever. The
That's the
Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots, which is made by Gary Hodges, and you should subscribe to his channel. And I'm 10 minutes over what I promised. So, Corey, where can people find your work before we call it?
CoreyKerr.com.
And darn it, Corey, like, the problem we have when we stream is I really enjoy our conversations, so I want to stay up till like 5 a.m. talking.
That's because I'm really good at small talk.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So how are the kids? They're doing good? Yeah.
Yeah, they're surviving.
Great. That's so that my response was like, when it's real small talk, where it's like just a person like, yeah, oh well, there,
right,
and you're like, well, but I just said they're like survive, like I didn't say they're great.
I just gave you an indication that there's possibly a problem.
Yeah.
Well, that's like, I'll one quick thing. My wife is kind of like one of those people that's like, just, whatever makes everybody comfortable, most of the time. I mean, she's a straight shooter, but at the same time, she'll also, anyway, so somebody walked up to her at a thing we were at the other day and was like, hey, I would like to help with the baby. Do you need anything? Like, like, what can I do? And most people, and the woman actually said, like, most people kind of brush this off and say, oh, I don't need anything or whatever, but like, I actually would. So like, what can I do? And, she was like, oh, nothing or whatever. And it's one of our neighbors. And so I just stepped in and I was like, Malia needs a nap. And so when Maddox goes down tomorrow at this time, it would be great if you could take Rosalind, and everybody was like, that's kind of bizarre that you were so clear and forward. And except for the lady who was asking, she was like, thank you for telling me that. Like, that's actually what I was going for. But everybody else was like, wow, it's just so forward. And it's just like, the way we talk in America is stupid.
No, and honestly, that is really sophisticated communication because, and this is something that this is something I think most people actually need to practice. It's a communicating need. It's like, I think we have a lot of trouble as a society, like asking for help or communicating need.
Yeah.
And so, like, how often do people just go, oh, it's okay, it's okay? Like, when people are like, is there any way I can help or something? And it's like, so, and then like they'll feel like, like no one's helping me. Like,
I know.
But it's like they're not communicating the need. Whereas like a lot of people, if they just, you just tell somebody like, I'm overloaded, I need this thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually who are friends will be like, yeah, let's make that happen,
Yeah.
And then, there's some people who will be like, but at least you're, the nice thing about that is it like separates the wheat from the chaff. Not that you should be keeping points, but it's just, like that's where you kind of find out like who your friends are. and those are great times. Like, honestly, like I have a lot of great friendships from that,
Yeah.
from times where I've like communicated need and they've been there, and vice versa. So that's a hard thing to do, because none of us like admitting we need help, or that we want help, or that, like, so I think that's I'm just saying, I think that's pretty badass and sophisticated, especially for a parent. Because, like, dude, anyone out there who does not have kids, who has friends with kids, you know what the best thing you can do for your friend is, like, be like, especially if you're vaccinated now and, like, during COVID, call a friend with a kid and just be like, okay, I want you guys to sleep. We're going to come just watch your kid for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, no, and be like, nope, that's happening. Go rest. Like, that's a proactive, awesome thing. I'm just saying, if you're ever like thinking like, I should buy like this kid like a onesie or something. No, don't buy the onesie. Just like volunteer to like come by and watch the kid for like an hour so the person can sleep. Especially young kids.
Yeah.
Naps are like traded commodities. That's the conch shell of the Lord of the Flies that is being a parent.
For real. And if you can do that in a way that makes it feel like, you're not a burden. Like, we had a friend who did that. And she totally just, what did she say? Because she said, oh, hey, I'm going to grab Maddox for a play date. So, and you can take a nap. And so it wasn't like, I'm going to do you this favor. It's like, my kids want to play with your kid, or whatever, or I whatever. So yeah, exactly. It was great. And cause that way, Malia didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm such a burden. It was like, oh, good. She wants it. She's not doing it because she feels like she has to.
Okay, now we're going on to a completely awesome, different topic. And Corey, no, this is not your fault. This is our fault. So it's a good conversation, and it's everyone in the chat's fault. Thank you guys for being really awesome and engaging. Now, because of that, I have extended my time from sleep by 17 minutes, but I appreciate it because I got a little more work done. I still didn't finish the page, but I don't think I'm going to burn out, so that's good. Yeah, I did mention that at the top that I'm slightly close to burnout. It's all Frank's fault. If the Tarako Creative Cast just had a little more distance with the IRS. No, I'm just kidding. No, Frank, Paul, Gary, Jake, like, it's just so neat to like have everybody chime in the chats, and you guys are such a good group of people that I could talk to you guys for like 6 hours. But I also have to work tomorrow. So have a good night, you guys. And Corey can be found at CoreyKerr.com. And you can also find him on Instagram if you want. Especially on Instagram, you can see some really cool sneak peeks of his animations and like the process as it's going. And you can also check out the most recent animation he made of like a ghost. Well, I don't want to give away too much. Just like an interesting astronaut scenario. So
and we mentioned this before, but several people went on and commented with multiple accounts, which was awesome. So that was nice.
I like that.
Pretty sure quite a few of the comments are Frank from different accounts.
I like that Frank has like 20 identities. But that's cool. And then let's see. Frank said he got IRS stuff. Like, are you talking about Internal Revenue Service stuff recommended when you were watching the IRS show? Because that would be funny. Or was it our own stuff? All right. So everybody have a good night. Have a good rest. I hope you guys got some creative work done. And hopefully I'll be able to do a stream tomorrow because I'm going to bed a little early. So good to see you, Corey.
Yeah.
Always a fun conversation. And get 2 stories if you guys haven't. So yeah, on Amazon or requested from your local comic shop. And what was the way we were talking about doing these closings? Okay, we're out. Bye.